Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today I have a guest whose name is Jeff Heiser. Now, Jeff is the nationally known radio talk show host and motivational speaker. Now, when I say that, I want you, the audience, to know that Jeff Heiser, MLC, is an accomplished business motivator, leader, and communicator with over 35 years of diverse business and entrepreneurial experience. He has a lot to share with our audience today, so I want to welcome to our show, Jeff Heiser.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Susan.
Well, it's my pleasure. Now, here, I read in your bio that you've played significant roles in 6 successful business startups. How did you do that?
Well, I guess you could say I was in the right place at the right time. I've been involved in numerous different businesses. The last business I was involved in, if you've ever flown on JetBlue or Frontier or WestJet or Virgin, any of the Virgin airlines, you've experienced my product. We developed the TV systems and the pay-per-view movie systems that play on those aircraft.
Wow.
Along with the cashless cabin, when you buy a drink and you swipe your card, that's we came out with that original product.
That's amazing. Now, let's talk about these businesses. It's never an easy thing to start a business. So you must have a very entrepreneurial spirit. And if you do, and I assume you do, I want you to tell our audience what that means.
Well, that's a hard thing to describe. But the best way I think I can tell you is, and I never considered myself like an entrepreneur per se. I consider myself a competitor, and I don't like to lose. I like to win, and I like to win big. And so I put everything that I have, body, mind, and soul, into whatever it is that I'm going after, if that's what I want to do to win. And so I look at myself as more as a competitor, not as an entrepreneur. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur." And no, not really. I like to call myself a competitor, which I guess you can say I'm an entrepreneur, but I do the same thing in sports. I do the same thing with my kids. I do the same thing with business. So your personality was developed when you were very young. Did you have that kind of attitude, that kind of feeling when you were young that you wanted to compete with the best, with the greatest? Was that something that you had any kind of thoughts about? Oh, absolutely. I can tell you this. It's a really funny story. My family used to live in New York, and my grandmother used to live in Brooklyn. And we were there one weekend, and I think I was like 6 years old, maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I had found some raffle tickets. It was like maybe 10, 15, 20 raffle tickets. And they were both sides, where you can tear them in half and go and sell them. So I took these tickets, and I went door to door in the neighborhood selling these tickets for like $1 each. The thing is, the raffle had already been over, but I didn't know that. So I went selling these tickets, and these people came to my grandmother's house and said, I don't know if we should tell him or not, but, these are old raffle tickets. And, I felt bad for him that he was going around selling these tickets, but I started at that age. I remember when I was, I think it was 10 or 11, I lied to the guy that had the paper routes, that was giving out the paper routes. I think you had to be 14, and I told him I was 14, and he gave me a paper route. It was like the Daily News, and you had to roll these things up, and then you ride your bike and you throw them. And I had like 250 people that I had to do this with, and I was like 11 years old.
Wow.
And I remember the first paycheck, and it was like holy smokes, I think it was like $10, and it was like, oh man, I made my first $10.
There you go.
Yeah. And I was bit. I had the bug. I mean, it's been like that ever since.
You know, it's an interesting thing that you talk about that, because many years ago I had a friend whose husband was the person who wrote about the McDonald's ad. He was also very young, but he had that kind of, I don't know, it is a right brain, left brain. He had that sort of attitude about what the people would want. So he wrote the McDonald's. Now, can you imagine writing a McDonald's ad? Yeah. So, you know, it reminds me, when you talk about your past, it reminds me of that story. You know, there are young people who have a very, very positive attitude about being successful. And when they try very hard, they can reach their goals. Now, let's talk about your goals. So, go ahead.
Let me say something about that, though, with young people. And one of the things that what I've experienced going around, talking around the country, is that a lot of young people don't understand that they want success, but they're afraid to fail in their pursuit of success. And for me, that was one of the primary ingredients for me to become successful, because when I failed, I learned that much more about how to succeed. And so you have to fail along the way. If you don't, I believe that you will never reach that full potential of your success, because you haven't failed enough. You haven't failed forward enough. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear about young people, I always tell them, don't be afraid to fail. It's okay, because you learn so much when you do.
Yeah. Now, what is the statistic about how many businesses will fail? Because I always read about and hear about that 1 out of, say, every 5 businesses fails. Is that?
Yeah. I've heard it's 1 or 2 out of every 5 fail, and within the first 5 years, it's the number is really high. I forget what it is. I want to say it's like 50% in the first 5 years fall out, and it's easy. I mean, when the bills get hard, and it's hard to make your payments, and it's hard to pay your rent and see how you're going to make your payroll, it's easy to just say, whoop, that's not for me, bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Now, you sound extremely passionate about what you do. Now, passion plays a role in people's lives when they want to get a job, when they want to do something special. Do you think that it's okay to have a passion, but you have to be careful, because passion for certain businesses can be horrible? I mean, take a look at some of the sportscasters, young sportscasters. They, everyone wants to be a sportscaster. But
you know what? Not everybody is made to be a sportscaster. Wanting to be one and being one are 2 different things. And I'll give you a really good analogy to this. My wife is an engineer, and she's a very good engineer. She's a manager at GE, a managing engineer, and she is the furthest thing in her mind from being an engineer. That's not her passion at all. Mm-hmm. And so for now 30 years, she has absolutely hated what she's done. Right. She gets a paycheck. The projects have been very interesting, but there's no fulfillment. There's no feeling really good about it. It's just, I got a job. Mm-hmm. I'm an engineer. I do these projects. Now, there's other things that she's very passionate about, like her stained glass and her some of the other things that she does. And that's the same thing with the sportscasters. Yeah. You know, if your dad or your teacher or your mom or somebody said, oh, you make a really good sportscaster, well, what if that's not what you really want to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Right? I mean, what if you really want to be, you want to be a writer. You want to write the copy for it, but everybody said, oh, you've got such a great voice. You do so good. You should be a sportscaster. Mm-hmm. right?
Right.
And it's the same with the professional athletes, that their career is done, and now because their career is done and they played football or they played baseball, the natural progression in the profession is to become an announcer. Well, some people just aren't announcers. Some people are definitely players, but they just stink when it comes to announcing.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I want you to take us through the process of what you do. You help businesses and individuals overcome the fears of success, enabling them to go from surviving to thriving. Now, how do you do that? Just give me a little kind of taste of what it's like to be a motivator, which you are. How do you go about it?
Well, what I do is I tell my personal story about, a lot of people say there's a lot of, they've got a lot of obstacles, they've got a lot of things in their way, and for the most part, those are just excuses. When you sit on your bed and you have a gun in your hand and you're making a choice whether you're going to get some help or you're going to end your life because you don't believe that you can go any further, that's a deciding moment in your life, okay? So I bring people back to some deciding moment in their life and make them think about who stopped them. And most of the time, who stops them in their tracks is their own self. It's their own voices. It's the people, I like to say the people in your head, because sometimes people have a lot of people in their heads talking to them, and it's your own voice. And what you need to learn to do is to silence those voices and put people in your head that are cheerleaders for you, that are your fans, your number one fans. Once you get to that point and get yourself out of your comfort zone and you step outside and you take a step and you try something different or something new, a new approach or whatever it is, life changes.
Yeah.
And so what I try to convey to people is that it doesn't have anything to do with what, for me at least it didn't, what the goal was, what my specifics that I was going, objectives were that I was going after. I just needed to make a move. And once I made that move, once I took the step in a direction, whether the direction was right or not, my life changed, and it changed dramatically. And that's the same thing that can happen for anybody.
Well, yes, that's true. But also, I want to know if you're a woman versus, of course, a man. Is it as easy as that is for a man? Because I just interviewed somebody who told me that she had the most difficult time trying to find her passion because people put obstacles, and I'm talking about men put obstacles in front of her. So what's your experience with that?
Well, I'm going to be brutally honest, okay? And the listeners might not like what I'm going to say. But any time I hear something like that, whether it's from a man or from a woman, I say that's an excuse. It's an excuse. There's a way to get what you want if you want it bad enough. And for example, if you're, and I don't know what it is to be a woman,
Right.
but if I was I'm a guy, and if I wanted to say be a professional baseball player, but everybody's just saying, hey, you can't be a professional, and I wanted it bad enough, I would do everything in my power to overcome whatever obstacles were in my way and not let those obstacles become my personal excuses, my internal excuses to not go after it. Because you see, when that person says, well, the man stopped me, okay, the next time that she confronts this another individual, he might not be stopping her, but her mind is saying, oh, he's a man, he's going to stop me. It's the same thing with the guy. Oh, he's the boss. I can't get past the boss. I don't know why I ever try, so I just stop. Right? But there's ways to get around those things. Either you have to remove yourself from there, or you have to find a way to go over, not over that person, but through that person, and get to the point where you want to be.
Right.
But if you just let your mind say, well, I can't because so-and-so is standing in my way, what happens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I think it was Mark Zuckerberg. He's the Facebook guy, right?
Sure.
When he started it, no money, none. It was on a wish and a dream that they built Facebook. And then when it went to go to IPO, to the initial stock, they had no way of generating revenue. And everyone told him that. And he said, it's okay. We'll figure it out on the way. He didn't let that stop him, and it stops a lot of people in their tracks. Oh, man, we don't even have a product. How are we going to go and push our company? It's like what I do here with radio. It's like, well, you know, it's radio. What's your real product? Well, there's a lot of different products, but there's certain people in the industry that let those type of things stop them in their tracks. Well, we don't have something to give to people. Oh, we do. We have lots of things we give to people.
Yeah. So when you talk about that situation, I want you to think about this. There are people who have big dreams. They want to be, you know what, anything, a lawyer, a doctor, a businessman, everything. And the problem that they have to overcome is people, not them, but people around them who tell them it's never going to happen. Can't do it. Can't raise the money. Don't have the ability to do it. What do you say to that?
Well, what I tell them is that the opinions of other people towards you are none of your business, and you shouldn't be listening to them. And what are you doing today, right now, right this minute, to work towards what you want? Because if you ain't doing that right now, then you really don't want it that bad enough. Now,
right? you are, we're in 2016.
Yes.
So is there anything that you see that the people are going to be able to do in the future? Because things are changing, and technology like crazy. And so what do you foresee is going to be the future of business for people?
I think we're going to see some of the big players, some of the big companies, like the Macy's and the JCPenney's and the Sears, and those companies kind of go away. And I think you're going to see more of people, smaller businesses dealing with people on more of a personal, collaborative type of arrangement. So you have something that I need, I have something that you need, and we either work together or we do business together. I see the desktop as we know it probably going away, and us moving more towards very portable information devices, whatever that might be. I see more individuals as individual businesses than as these big, humongous corporations and conglomerates and what have you. And you're starting to see that a little bit out west. You're starting to see like a resurgence of people that are rethinking what it is to be successful. And, you know, for a long time in my generation, success was you had a lot of money, you had a big house, you had a lot of cars, you had the nice cars, you had a boat, you had a motorhome, all those things. And from what I see in just my own children, those things aren't as important anymore as their free time, their ability to have the freedom that they need to participate with their children or participate in the communities, but still make a living. And I see that switch. You know, right now we all go to an office, or many of us do, go to an office. We work, 8 to 5 or whatever it is. We go home. And I see that changing. I really, really do. And people I know are experiencing it. They're working from home. They're working remotely. I have a friend that works out of a motorhome for a major corporation. And they wind up 3 or 4 months in a place and then move on, and 3 or 4 months in a place and move on. And everything is connected. and they do their job.
Yeah. Now, this may be a little switch in my conversation with you, but I'd like you to think about veterans. There are so many veterans coming back from Iran, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, you name it, and they've led a very difficult life for the last, say, 4 years of their life, and how did you encourage them when they've seen so much and they've really experienced horrible things? If you were to talk to them as one of their motivators, and what would you say to them? Because you talk about fears of success. Well, I don't know if they have the fears of success, but I think they have the fear of failure.
Well, I actually do a lot of speaking to veterans, and in fact, last November I was on a tour throughout the Midwest speaking to veterans. I talk on post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide, and substance abuse. And basically, the veterans that are coming back, what I tell them is they need to talk about their experiences, because when they don't talk about their experiences, they internalize it. And when they internalize it, that's when things kind of get bad. And that's when it got bad for me. That's when it got bad for my son and for many of my friends. Now, the thing about it is, what a majority of the people in our country don't understand is a majority of our returning veterans right now are young people that went into the military coming right out of high school. They didn't have a job. They didn't have a week of training. They say, this is the way you write a resume, this is the way you write an interview, this is what you do, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Now, here's a young man or a young woman that spent 4 or 8 years in the military or more, never had a job except for in the military, and has jumped on the street. They have bills, they have families, they have responsibilities, and they can't get a job. Right. Because they don't even know what a job to them really is except for in the military.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So what do? They have to talk to people. They really do. And if they start to internalize things, they have to get professional help, because that's a slippery slope. You don't want to become a statistic.
Yes.
Here in where the studio is, in this county, we have the highest number of homeless veterans in the state of Florida, concentrated in Brevard County, which is it's unbelievable that we could have that. But when you look at these veterans, they're young people. They're not old guys. They're not in their 50s or 60s. These are kids that are in their late 20s and 30s, living on the street because they can't get a job.
Terrible. Now,
it is.
It's just awful.
And what I tell them is, the voice that you hear in your head, that's a voice that you're making up. That's your voice. Mm-hmm. The only person that can silence that voice is you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting and also very encouraging, because you have that attitude that people can change and they can have success if they really set their minds to it. Now, Jeff, let's talk last but not least about your radio show and your blog. Tell the audience what you're doing now with your radio show and with your blog.
Well, the radio show is called Success and Intentional Lifestyle. And the whole idea behind it is that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people, well-known people, that have experienced things in their life where they have been stuck, where they thought there was no way out, that's where they'd be forever, and they took a step of intentionality, and they've become successful again. I've had numerous people on my show, NFL football players, baseball players, congressional people, business people, very high-end business people, astronauts, and every one of them talk about a time in their life where they were stuck and they had to make a decision, whether they were going to go after what they really wanted, or were they just going to sit in their comfort zone and say, oh, woe is me, I guess this is my life for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And so that's what the show is all about, that you are not alone in this world. There's lots of people that experience these things that make you feel stuck and make you feel like there's no tomorrow and that you have no chance of success. There's lots of stories that say that's not necessarily true if you are willing to take that step. Mm-hmm. And that's what my blogs are basically the same thing. Just they talk about kindness and how that affects you, and are you committed to the game, and how playing the game can change your life. There's a lot of good information that I put out.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jeff, if our audience wants to speak to you and over the computer or some way, how do they reach you? And would you give them your website and tell them a little bit more about your blog?
Yep. You can get to my website by going to www.jeffheiserradio. That's JEFFHEISER radio.com. Or you can email me at the same, it's jeff@jeffheiserradio.com. Or you can call me here at the studio, which is 321-806-3159.
Well, Jeff, you've been a great guest today because you've given people the inspiration and a little bit of a push, I think, to pursue what they want to do, and I think that's a wonderful thing. So thank you for being on the Susan Brender Show. Jeff, should I call you Coach Heiser?
Yeah, you can call it's like what the old saying, you can call me anything, just don't call me late to dinner.
There you go. Well, again, thank you very much for being on the Susan Brender Show. It was great.
Thank you so much. And just remember, nothing happens without you taking the first step.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.